Okay, so putting your plan into action here, just some closing thoughts here. And this goes back to the PMI study that we brought. So I brought up at the beginning of the meeting here. So closing communication gaps around your business benefits, tailor the communications to different stakeholder groups. Okay. Acknowledge the value of project management. Now, that may be a little hard to do, all right, because the question is what's the value of project management within the organization? So your job then is to, if you've got an executive sponsor or a couple of people who think it might be important, you need to convince them it's very important, okay? So I always find in situations like this is just back everything up with facts, because this is an established discipline that can really help you. And if your communication plans are lacking, you've now got a lot of ammunition to go to say our project is potentially going to fail because we don't have this. So you can head off the disaster before it happens. Okay, and then lastly, once again, use standardized project management communication practices. There's a lot of things that work and don't work out there. There's a few cardinal rules. Happy to share any more of that with you. Just make sure it's highly articulated and organized, and I think you'll be in good shape, okay? And then last, oh, by the way, which is the whole point of this slide, speaking in the language of the C-suite, all right? The whole point is you do need to talk up too, all right? So your executive sponsors are the reason you're there, right? So you need to be able to speak the language of the C-suite, okay? So be less tactical, more strategic in terms of your approach. Okay, hallelujah, he's done. All right, communication exercises for you. Now these are supposed to be fun, folks, so once again, to help you learn, Daryl and myself here, we're both from Oracle, will help facilitate and explain anything to you as we kind of go along. We got a couple of things here. We'll give everybody a little bit of time to do the communication. This is a case study. The state of California, this is a real-life case study. There are 5 scenarios here, okay, in this document. And what I'd like all of you to do is to break out into 5 groups of 10, okay? Designate a lead and designate a recorder, okay? And as you've gone through this, for anybody who hasn't read this, go ahead and read it. My apologies for the length, but need to give you the context of what's actually going on in the agency. So there are questions here, scenario 1, and then the communication exercise. So what I'd like you to do as a group is to give some thought as to how to answer that. No right, no wrong answers. This is a learning exercise to see who's doing what everybody's approach is, okay, to that. So we'll give you, I guess, about 20 minutes to do that, all right? And then we'll come back and we'll go back and do a little bit of reporting on that. The other thing that we will do is a communication plan assessment, okay? Now this is really an agency kind of department communication assessment. It's meant to gauge, gee, how well do you think you're doing in your particular agency? So it's going to be interesting. All those charts along the wall, you'll see there's a rating system of 1 to 5 here. So 1 is, if you look at the question and answer the question, it's true in a few cases. 3 would be it's true in some cases. And 5 would be it's true in almost all cases. Okay? So you'll see on the groups here, that everybody's groups, stay in the same groups. If you answer question 1 and say it's only applicable in a few cases, then just put a hash mark next to that 1, okay? And just go all the way down with all of those questions. And so within each group, we're going to see some trends in terms of who's actually doing what, which I think will be pretty revealing in terms of your communication assessment within your particular groups, okay? The other thing I'll mention to you, and feel free if you do not have these handouts to use to come up and pick them out as well. In addition to the case study, I've also provided you with a communication planning template, okay? There's 4 major areas here between audience, key messages, channels, and then product, which means product outputs. But you can use this as kind of a guide in answering these questions, okay, on the case study. And the last document we have, which is a take-along, goes really good with Chardonnay. Right? Okay, and this is a communication self-assessment. So this tells you how good you are, or I shouldn't say how good you are, what style of communication you tend to fall into. So if you fill these out, and I think it's self-explanatory. If you find it a little confusing, I can explain a little bit more. But if you fill out these questions, and they're in pairs, so if you fill out one here, if you fill out 2 here, and as you circle all these, they all come up to 40, but the higher numbers are going to kind of indicate what your particular style is. It's important to know who you are, okay, from a communication perspective, so you can make some adjustments, because you could be the problem. Okay, you could be the problem. So, but it's important to know that because you can fix it. You can fix it. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind is all of those map to these particular styles of orientation. So whether you're action-oriented, process-oriented, people-oriented, or ideas-oriented, it kind of tells you what the communication behavior is of that type of person. Okay. And then lastly, you got to know who your neighbor is, right? So you have to adjust to someone's communication style. So if they're really abrupt, whatever the case may be, you need to know how to communicate with them. This kind of outlines how they perceive things from a communication perspective. And then lastly, what I've done is overlaid that with just your orientations between what your particular value orientation is with you as a manager and or an employee, and how that interaction happens. Okay, so this is a nice little take home for you. Okay, so let's get started on the case study. Okay, is everybody clear?